It's draft day in the NBA, and the Knicks find themselves with just one second round pick. Will they try to get in on day one? Who are they targeting? And what's the deal with Micah Nori, who they interviewed to be their head coach? All that right now on Locked On Knicks.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
All right, welcome in to Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast. I'm Alex Wolf. I'm editor-in-chief of Knicks site, The Strickland, which you can find at thestrick.land. And on today's show, we're talking about the NBA draft. What else? Who are the Knicks looking at? That's a big thing. I feel like there's been very few workouts reported. So there's been a few guys that they've been reported to be interested in or having worked out recently. So that will be part of today's show. In addition to what might they be looking to do? Are they looking to move up? Are they trying to stick at pick 50? History tells us probably not, and I'll get into why. And then also the Knicks interviewed Micah Nori for their head coach job, the third reported candidate that they've interviewed. Granted, I'm sure they've talked to other people, but this is the third guy we have on record. So I'll be getting into Micah Nori a little bit later on in the episode and what he could potentially bring to the Knicks as the head coach. But first, I want to thank you all for making Locked On Knicks first listen today and every day, whether you're checking us out on your favorite podcast platform or taking in sights and sounds on YouTube. We appreciate you making this part of your daily routine. Make sure you hit the auto download function on your favorite podcast app or the notification bell on YouTube so you never miss an episode. All right, so what are the Knicks up to right now in terms of getting ready for the draft, and what are they looking to do? The draft now, of course, 2 days. It's Wednesday is the first round. Thursday is the second round. If I was a betting man, I would probably say I expect the Knicks to be much more active on Thursday. Granted, that doesn't mean that they can't start lining the pieces up today. But there is always a possibility that they would potentially look to get it back into the first round, despite only having the 50th pick in the draft on hand at this particular moment. The reason I bring that up is they're registering interest in Adou Thiero, per Chris Persianen of Clutch Points, friend of the show, real good dude, and he's doing really good work in terms of sourcing things lately. I would imagine that if he says that they have interest in Thiero, they probably do. And I think he kind of fits the profile of a guy that I would want to see on the Knicks. He's a 6'6" wing. That's per the draft combine. He was previously listed, I think, at 6'7", 6'8", but he measured officially 6'6" without shoes, which I guess does probably put him at about 6'7" with shoes. Had a 7-foot wingspan at the NBA draft combine. From what I could tell, from the limited amount that I've watched of him, he has crazy springs in his legs, really good defensive instincts based off, just what I've seen. Good instincts around the rim as far as like a help rim protector, which you love to see, especially on a team with an OG Anunoby and a Mikal Bridges. Can't really create a better duo to learn from for a kind of raw defensive-minded wing than that. He's number 16 on Prez's big board. He's 11 on our friend Chuck of Chucking Darts' board. So some draft people that we respect have him listed pretty high on their rankings. Based off watching him for a little bit, I would tend to agree. I haven't put in the hours of watching tape to say that definitively, but based off what I've seen, I feel like he would be a pretty good fit. There's also the John Calipari connection with Thiero. He played for Arkansas under Calipari this past year. But the big thing is going to be the Knicks have the juice to move up as far as they would need to go get him. Jonathan Wasserman of Bleacher Report yesterday did kind of a AMA on Twitter and let people, ask him questions, which will actually motivate the next segment because he was asked about the Knicks and gave some pretty interesting insight as far as they're concerned. But as far as Thiero was concerned, he got asked where he expects him to go, and he had said high 20s or 30s, just based on no green room invite and the lack of second round depth as far as the range for Thiero. I think that the no green room thing maybe he still gets drafted, but the green room invites have been pretty prescient. And it seems like the NBA tends to have a pretty good idea of who's going to go where when they make those invites. I think just they're trying to, make the product as good as it can be. So they want to have guys that they think are actually going to get drafted in there on draft night, especially now they've got this whole 2-day thing going on, which I still think is dumb, if I'm being honest. I don't know why the NBA draft can't just be one night. It's not the NFL draft where I don't know, whatever. Anyway, either way, I think that I think it's going to take a good amount of finagling for the Knicks to move their way up, which I'll get into in the next segment a bit, where I break down what ammo they actually have to make potential moves if they really feel passionate about going and getting someone. But yeah, I would say they're probably looking at him as if he falls into the general range of where they took like Deuce McBride, Tyler Kolek, like early to mid 30s, something like that. They'll find a way to finagle their way in there and take him if they feel passionate enough about it. But getting into the first round, a little more of a challenge, and not one that the Knicks have traditionally done. If anything, when they're in the first round, they tend to trade back, and then they try to trade up in the second round. They haven't often tried to go get a late first round pick because I think that they appreciate the flexibility that comes with taking a guy in the second round. That said, maybe they like Thiero enough that they're willing to make that move and get up into the first round, sign that guaranteed contract, whatever. They should have enough flexibility under the cap aprons and stuff that adding someone for, I don't know, 2 million starting salary or whatever that the late first rounders will get probably won't sink their off season or anything. So we'll see how that all goes on the first night of the draft. But my bet would be probably second night of the draft. But Chris Persianen of Clutch Points again also noted the Knicks are interested in Jonathan Pierre of Belmont. That was the second name he listed in addition to Thiero. If true, seems like the Knicks are kind of on the hunt for a wing in this draft. Then Pierre's listed at 6'8", average about 14 points, 6 boards, 3.5 assists on 40% from the field, 37% from three, and 76.8% from the free throw line this past year. I'll fully admit I didn't do a ton of extra homework on Pierre, so if they draft him, we'll get someone on to give us a better perspective on that watched tons of college tape. But interesting nonetheless to know that the Knicks are looking at guys that are in that, solidly in that wing range, presumably guys that could shoot the three and defend. I mean, that's still a valuable archetype in the NBA. I think there's more of an emphasis placed on being able to handle the ball and stuff like that now than in previous years in the NBA, but we'll see what ends up happening in terms of who they target. Another guy that was reported to have worked out, Ian Begley of SNY, said yesterday the Knicks had Alabama center Clifford Amarui, I believe is how you pronounce the last name, in for a workout this week as part of a multiplayer workout. So Amarui averaged 8 points, 6.5 boards, shot by far a career high 73% from the field. He averaged 1 block a game this past year at Bama, but previously averaged as high as 3 per game in his previous 4 seasons with Rutgers, and fully averaged out, I think, at 2 blocks a game with Rutgers. So seems like there's some rim protection potential there. He's about 6'10", seems to be a good rebounder. I find the interest a little, I don't want to say puzzling, but interesting considering they have Mitchell Robinson under contract already. I think based off what we saw this past season, that with another offseason of seasoning, a full training camp and a new coach and everything else, I feel pretty good about Ariel Hukporti in terms of potentially being a backup to Mitch this coming year. So not to mention the fact that presumably a new coach will probably play a decent number of minutes with Cat at the 5 as well. We'll see if they ultimately go with a 2 big starting lineup, which maybe then, precipitates having extra centers on the roster just in case of foul trouble or whatever, if you want to start Cat and Mitch out there. But presumably a new coach would have some plans for going small, potentially with no Cat or Mitch on the floor, have some plans for Cat at the 5, have some plans for Mitch at the 5. And, that kind of leaves you in a place where you probably don't need too much more insurance than Huck Porty there. But if I had to guess, I would guess that the Amarui uh, interest maybe is more of if they hold at 50 kind of situation, or maybe they're even looking at him if he slips out of the first round, becomes an undrafted free agent. We'll see. But I want to get into some of the possibilities for the Knicks moving up. Jonathan Wasserman of Bleacher Report, who's always one of our favorites, had a nice reply on Twitter in his little AMA that he ran about the Knicks. So I want to get into that because he's usually pretty in the know in terms of draft day stuff. So let's take a quick moment and then come back and talk about the report, or at least the speculation from Jonathan Wasserman about the Knicks. But first, I want to let you know about our friends over Open Phone. And if you're running a business, you know that every missed call is money left on the table. Think about the last time you had an urgent need, maybe for a plumber or a service provider. And if the first person didn't answer, did you wait? You probably didn't. You moved on. That's why you need Open Phone. Open Phone is the #1 business phone system built to streamline and scale your customer communications, all from an app on your phone or computer. It lets you manage business calls and texts from a single app, which is great. We live in a society where a lot of what we do is on our cell phones, so having a dedicated business line at home or whatever, or having an office where you have a dedicated office line number, kind of a thing of the past. Those running small businesses, if you're running a small business, you might be running the whole thing out of the back of a van, essentially, with all of your work equipment and just you, and being at home and all that. You might not even have a physical location anymore, so why would you have a physical phone line or anything other than just an app on your phone that lets you have a second line, which is a little more affordable than adding like a full second line to your phone, or getting a whole separate SIM card or something like that. That's why Open Phone is so nice. And good news, Open Phone is offering our listeners 20% off your first 6 months at openphone.com/lockedonnba. That's openphone.com/lockedonnba. And if you have existing numbers with another service, Open Phone will port them over at no extra charge. Open Phone, no missed calls, no missed customers. All right, I'm back in to keep talking through draft day for the Knicks, what it could potentially hold for them. This used to be like a holiday for Knicks fans. And it's so funny that now it's like total afterthought. I don't know. It really snuck up this year. Granted, I say that I've been wanting nothing more than to be able to zero in on the draft for the last couple of weeks and been openly pining for it. And yet I've only really managed to get one draft episode in prior to today because of the coaching search. So thanks, Knicks, for creating a 24/7 news cycle around their coaching hire, or coaching search, I should say, and firing of Tibbs and all that. So anyway, let's hear from our buddy Jonathan Wasserman, who previous longtime guest of Locked On Knicks back in the heavy draft days when we would be getting into this stuff in like April. I tried to lock him down for today after seeing this tweet, but understandably, he's pretty busy being the lead draft guy at Bleacher Report, so was not able to get him on. So we'll just operate with what he said on Twitter yesterday. So he had sort of an AMA on Twitter, and someone asked, "Are there any intel on any workouts the Knicks have had, or if there's smoke they may move up, down, or out?" And Was said, "I'd bet on them moving up into the early second round." So then I started thinking about, okay, well, how are they going to make that work? And my buddy Prez, during his one of his pieces recently, made a really nice analogy on the Strickland that the Knicks have consistently in the Leon Rose era been like the blogger that turned a paperclip into a house. Um, that's sort of how the Knicks approach the draft. Is they come in with a couple late picks or whatever, and then they make moves up, down, up, down, up, down, back and forth ad nauseum, to the point where poor fellows like me that are just trying to cover who they're taking in the draft or whatever never know until like 2 hours after the draft, when the dust settles, who officially the Knicks are going to end up with after any given night, because they do so much moving up and down, and just generally trying to get what they want out of the draft, which is usually definitely not talking to teams at the same time. They definitely talk to teams separately, and plan out a web of what they plan on doing, because what ends up happening a lot of times is they'll move up and then they'll move back from that pick and secure a future draft asset, and then they'll use some other asset to move back up again and get some other pick, and then they'll move back again, and then they'll move back up again until they finally land somewhere where they say, okay, here's a player that we actually want to take in this draft. But there's just a lot of like trying to just squeeze every little bit that they can. It's like they're like, if the draft is a juicer, like one of those old ones where you could put an orange on it and just kind of like twist the orange on it and get your juice out. It's like the Knicks are sitting there like just still grinding it until literally you take it out and it's just the rind, and maybe you even got past the white part of the rind and you're like into the orange part of the rind by the time you're done. I mean, they make a strong juice when they're trying to juice the draft. So yeah, I think that I would buy into what Wass says. It sounds like they are into some guys that could potentially be like early second round guys. Thiero is the top guy, it seems like, that they're really interested in. And I don't think it's a stretch to say that the Calipari connection is worth something. I mean, it's been a while since we've seen that rear its head for the Knicks, because that was more of a thing when he was at Kentucky. And the first couple years of the Leon Rose regime, when obviously they took quickly the first year, there was the story of Worldwide Wes shirtless blasting New York's or Empire State of Mind, on a Zoom call begging Leon Rose to take Manuel quickly or whatever back in the day. Seems like forever ago, but there's a definite connection there, I think, between Worldwide Wes and Cal. So maybe there's a little bit of a, I don't want to call it collusion or a campaign or anything, but maybe there's a little bit of something there where maybe Calipari is trying to guide Thiero to the Knicks. If the Knicks are really interested in him, we'll see. But it'll be interesting, I think, to see what the Knicks use to get a deal done if they are able to. So I won't totally bore with the details here. They have they actually don't, as near as I can tell, they don't own their own second round pick in any draft through 2031. All possible tradable second round picks are out the door for the Knicks at this moment. But thanks to other dealings, like I said, they trade up and down and up and down and up and down and get various picks in exchange for it. From what I can tell, over the next 3 years, they have 7 future seconds. They also have the Washington first round pick for the 2026 draft, which is the last year of its protection that was put in place. It was like lotto protected for a while, and then I think top 12 protected. Now it falls, for the final year of it, falls at top 10 protected. So if Washington next year has a pick outside of the top 10, the Knicks do get it. So the Knicks will get a first round pick next year, along with the fact that they have the swap with Brooklyn in place, which, reading the tea leaves, probably seems pretty unlikely to happen. So the Knicks most likely have their own first round pick next year, and possibly Washington's first next year, and I think 2 seconds next year incoming that have some various protections on them and swap rights and all that kind of junk. And I only bring up the Wizards thing because, obviously they just made the trade for CJ McCollum. They have Marcus Smart on the team already. They have Chris Middleton already. Sort of a weird collection of vets there, but a team that maybe ends up surprising. And I'm not going to say like makes the playoffs or something, but ends up being a late lottery team next year, like a 35 win team, something like that. Who knows? Maybe their plan is just to trade all those guys. I don't know. But either way, the Knicks have either a mid first round pick next year, which would be best case scenario, or they get Washington second next year and in 2027 if that pick doesn't convey as a first next year. So they have an okay amount of future seconds, particularly over the next 3 drafts to work with. They don't have any seconds from 2029 to 2031. Also, some of their own picks every other year tied up with the Nets. And then their picks also have swaps with the Nets, which you can still trade those picks. It's just you could trade them as like a swap right type thing or whatever. But yeah, so we'll see how all that ends up going in terms of what Washington is able to do next year. But the Knicks, as of right now, have a number of second round picks over the next few years that they could potentially use as ammo to move up. They also have Dolan's money to work with. As near as I could tell, I don't think in this league year the Knicks have used any cash in trades. So if that's the case, then they can include that. I think it's up to like 5 million now or something like that. You can send out in a deal, and hey, in the current NBA, I think an extra 5 million bucks maybe gets a deal done. Considering we're already seeing, I mean, just over the last couple days, like Boston, for example, a team that everyone thought could contend for years, kind of blown it up. Just in the obviously Tatum's out, which influences that situation heavily, but blown it up mostly just to avoid luxury tax penalties, because these second apron penalties are no joke. So hey, maybe 5 million or however much it is of Dolan's money is enough to even get the Knicks from 50 to like 36 or something, if that's what they want to take Thiero. But my guess would be, based off how the Knicks operate, they probably make a bunch of microtransactions. They get wherever they need to be on day 2 of the draft. I think it's probably unlikely they finagle their way in tonight into the first round of the draft, based off, again, just we have 5 years of of evidence of how Leon Rose operates. I don't think that's going to be high on their list to get back into the first round. I think they like the flexibility of the new second round salary slots to be able to kind of draft someone, let the free agent dust settle a little bit, and then ink their contract. Um, and get them inked like right before summer league, and do sort of the Kolek thing where maybe they find someone that they're so passionate about they want to give them that full second round max contract, which is now almost more like a late first in terms of how much you're able to pay second rounders. Or maybe they just want that flexibility of being able to look at someone in summer league and then say, okay, are we giving you a full deal? Or are we going to give you a two-way deal to start and then convert you later? I don't know. I do think that they like the second round, though. I think that's their thing. But no reason not, at least in my opinion, not to trust Leon Rose, Brock Aller, their cap specialists, Walt Perrin, their draft specialist, even Worldwide West. This front office has done really good work. So no reason that I can think of not to trust them. But we'll see what ends up happening. But in addition to draft news, the Knicks yesterday was revealed they interviewed Micah Nori of the Timberwolves for their head coach job. So I'll get into that in just a moment. But first, I want to let you know about our friends over at Wayfair. And there's nothing like stepping into your own outdoor space and feeling like you've escaped to a personal oasis. If you're wanting to upgrade your patio this season, Wayfair has made it so easy to turn it into a space that feels like yours: comfortable, stylish, and ready for summer. Wayfair has everything you need to level up your outdoor space: conversation sets, outdoor bars, fire pits, hot tubs, gazebos, and yes, even the perfect string lights to set the vibe. It's like giving your backyard that resort feel without the resort price tag. And that's certainly what I've been looking to do. I got to pull the trigger soon. It is officially summer now, but my wife and I moved into a new place. It's bigger. We can entertain now. It's awesome. We have a nice deck and a walkout patio in the basement. So a little bit of both. We have 2 spaces to furnish. Upstairs on the deck, though, we're trying to set up a kind of cozy vibe. Want like a hybrid like conversation set that you could also eat around if we want to have people over for a barbecue. So we're looking to pull the trigger soon. Whenever we do, I'll let you all know and let you know maybe which one I picked out on Wayfair. But we're definitely looking at Wayfair to potentially get our patio set. So don't wait. Make your outdoor space your dream oasis today with Wayfair and enjoy it all summer long. Head to wayfair.com right now and shop a huge outdoor selection. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. All right, I'm back in, and I'd be remiss if even on draft day I did not have more coaching news to get into. So let's talk about Micah Nori. Micah Nori, Timberwolves assistant that the Knicks interviewed for their head coaching job. I saw him referred to as the Ted Lasso of the NBA, thanks to his hilarious halftime interviews. If you haven't seen any of those, go look up a highlight tape. It's really fun. At one point, he says, "Boom goes the dynamite." That was cool. Also said it's on like Donkey Kong. I don't know. It's very funny. All the phrases of my youth. This dude just busts them out on a daily in halftime interviews in the NBA. But yeah, I'd be lying if I said I knew exactly what this guy does as a coach or what his record is as a coach. I will just say I got to respect the Knicks looking in on him. I think the Timberwolves provide the best possible blueprint in terms of how the Knicks can turn their current roster into a potential contender. I think there's a lot of common through lines there, like where if you look and they managed to make Cat and Rudy Gobert work and be one of the best defenses in the NBA. The Knicks could potentially do that with Cat and Mitchell Robinson, who I think that Mitch asserted himself again in the time since he got back from injury this year as a guy that could anchor a defense again and be one of the most impactful players on the court night to night. And of course, play with Cat, which we got to see frustratingly little of, but what we did get to see, I think that combo looked really good. So good to check in with the Timberwolves. Obviously they got denied the permission to speak to Chris Finch. Like, yeah, I don't blame them. I don't blame the Timberwolves for doing that because Finch has taken them to 2 straight Western Conference Finals. I think they're really building something there. I think that he's really elevated that team to like a new level. So it does make sense then to go down the coaching tree a little bit. And Nori is his lead assistant. Seems to have his hands in a lot of different things. So, I mean, I'll say, first off, these are all just like little things I saw floating around on Twitter or whatever, but saw a nice clip of him breaking down how the Timberwolves could defend Tyrese Halliburton. And it seemed like a pretty solid scheme where it was technically dropped, but he outlined how they would use their scheme to try to maroon all of the Pacers shooters on the sideline, get Halliburton into a one-on-one pick and roll action, and then play a little like a hedging drop on him, and how the defenders would potentially do that. Seemed cool to me. I don't know. I mean, yeah, I'm sure that he has all kinds of ideas of how he would do that, but given how the season ended or whatever, having a coach that seemed to have a pretty good plan for how to defend Tyrese Halliburton, cool. Also, there was another interview with him. I think it was like an internal like Timberwolves social media interview or something like that. But he was interviewed there. Had mentioned he's been in charge of calling plays and for sub patterns down the stretch of games. Obviously, sub patterns, big big bugaboo for Knicks fans with Tibbs this year, myself included. And so, maybe that's another thing that the Knicks find valuable about what he was bringing to the Timberwolves. Either way, I think it's good to check in on a guy like this. He seems well respected. It seems like the players love him that play for him. They speak highly of him. You can find interviews where like Anthony Edwards and other guys have said really nice things about Nori in terms of what his role is with the team. So yeah, I mean, I like interviewing him. I think the Timberwolves are a really well run organization right now. I think that Chris Finch has done a phenomenal job as head coach. So it stands to reason you would want to potentially poach someone off of that staff. But the Knicks have now interviewed Nori. They've interviewed Mike Brown. They've interviewed Taylor Jenkins, as far as everybody knows. So that's like the known list right now of candidates that the Knicks have interviewed. When they make their selection is now kind of going to be the hot thing, the hot topic. I'm not look. I'd be lying if I said that I have actual intel on this. I'm going to say it seems pretty unlikely we'll see a hire before or during the draft. I think the Knicks are just going to draft who they want to draft with their scouting team and make whatever moves they're going to make with Brock Aller that, net them whatever draft picks or whatever that they want and future assets and stuff like that. Maybe they just feel like, you know what, we don't need the coach input on that. We can let the coach know the deck of cards they're getting dealt. And, that if that includes Thiero, if that includes anyone else, whatever, they're going to have to figure that out. Like that's their job as coach, which I think was always kind of the thing with Tibbs too, where it felt like there had to be an outsized input from Tibbs on things where, I know Gavin and I even would talk about like, yeah, how is Tibbs going to feel about this or whatever? And it's like, you have to take that into account with a coach, but it's also sort of the coach's job to make the pieces work and not need players drafted strictly to be for them. So I would imagine that, that's sort of the Knicks thinking there, but might be prudent of them to try to get this done by the end of the week, maybe by Friday, Saturday. Free agency opens at 6 p.m. At the end of the month. So, I think that's going to be on Monday, if I'm not mistaken. 6 p.m. Monday is officially the start of free agency and the start of the new league year. So if that's the case, then maybe the Knicks want to get this thing done by the weekend, have like a really robust week of interviews, obviously take whatever time they need to focus on the draft and stuff, but maybe try to, get these interviews done and get a coach hired by the end of the weekend might be prudent. That way, I think free agents, look, you draft a player, they don't have any say in it. They're drafted by you regardless. But in terms of free agents, they might want a little more assurance about who the coach is going to be. Even with trades now, I mean, we see that players have an outsized impact on where they get traded and what their role is going to be and whatever. And maybe they would want to know who the coach is too. So maybe that's part of their plan. I guess we'll see. I get the feeling it's probably going to be a pretty busy week for the Knicks, though, in terms of moving and shaking in the draft and then potentially making a move on the coaching search. And of course, next week, start a free agency and possible trade season, all that good stuff in the new league year. So we'll see what ends up happening, but that's enough speculation for now. Let's see what happens in the first round of the draft tonight. And then, like I said, probably a pretty busy day for the Knicks on day 2 of the draft on Thursday night. But we'll be here for you for everything, including maybe even just talking about tonight, tomorrow, regardless of what happens in the first round. So we'll be back tomorrow to talk more, preview the second round, all that good stuff. But until then, thank you all for listening, and we'll talk to you soon. Peace out, everybody.